Hi everybody, A.J. Heightman here with JEMS, and it's my honor to be in a very casual environment here in Chula Vista, California with the star of our show, Greg Eubanks, his wife Lauren, his daughter Alex, and his daughter Hannah. And we're going to talk about something very unusual, and it's not unusual for the providers in many cases, but cardiac arrest, in your case, was very unusual.
Yes.
Because you became the first person in the U.S. to be saved through the use of head-up CPR using the elevated device that was created for that particular purpose. And so I think the EleGuard was one of the key things that helped you. But by way of background, Greg was visiting his mom in Indianapolis and was on a connecting flight to San Diego through Minneapolis, which is one of the hotbeds for CPR resuscitation. And you didn't know that when we started talking about this, but you got off the plane, and just tell us the last thing you really remember.
The last thing I remember is, like I said, the plane landing, going up the catwalk, getting into the terminal, and that's it. That's the last thing I remember.
That's it.
Yeah.
And then miraculously, it was right next to the TSA area.
So I've been told that I was able to meet the TSA agents, that first responders, and they filled in the gaps for me. I guess they said that I collapsed right in front of the TSA entry point and just fell face forward.
And they think that they started CPR within a minute.
Within about 30 seconds, yes.
And I think you realize the significance of that.
Oh, most definitely. I'm still here. So.
Had anybody told you that for every minute that goes by, that your chances diminish by about 10%? So we were batting 1,000 right at that particular point.
Yes.
And that's an amazing point. And then, so you've met the young lady and the gentleman that
yes, I have.
Came to your aid.
They've become a part of my extended family now.
And they did great CPR, and then they're a part of a system of care, which you weren't aware of when you and I first talked about the whole evolution, which is what excited me to be able to tell our audience a little bit about the system of care. So the bundles of care that have been developed out of Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the whole United States, a group of researchers came up with this bundle of care, which includes early CPR. And good CPR and constant CPR. Don't stop, because you couldn't drive your car down the highway if your fuel pump didn't work all the time. So they were doing good CPR. The fire department responded, and what they brought is something new, which is called the rescue CPR system, and that is a big suction cup on a device, on the rescue CPR device, and they began to take over CPR with this device. Which put that mark on your chest probably, and on every upswing, that the suction cup does not leave the chest, but it increases pressure inside.
Okay. So
you weren't aware of that either. No. So by increasing pressure inside, if I could squirt a hose inside and squirt some extra pressure in, every time his heart would beat, it would compress that heart a little bit better. So instead of the heart not having any assistance, there's extra air pressure in there that helps with those compressions. And every time you pull up, and then they put a device on the airway which does the same thing and keeps some air in. So Dr. Keith Lurie and others, Dr. Charlie Lick, who's the medical director there, they've been working very hard with this whole thing. So the fire department comes and they put the EleGuard on, which is something which elevates your head. And again, you weren't really aware of what this does.
I wasn't aware of anything at that point.
You were asleep. You missed an awful lot while you were asleep.
I missed an awful lot.
But essentially what they found in South Korea is that when they would resuscitate patients coming down in their dilapidated elevators with the patient's head high, they do better. So they began to study it over here in the pig lab, and they began to realize that when you raise the head of the pig or the cadaver or whatever they're using, the intracranial pressure would drop and the cardiac perfusion pressure would increase, which means that the vital organ, which is the brain, the CPU of the body, gets more blood. And so you had the benefit of the first use of the EleGuard in an airport, in the United States, and so we hope that that continues. So what that really does is they do regular CPR and they do rescue CPR, and then within about 2 minutes, the machine gradually comes up because we found that that's the sweet spot, and it puts your head in the proper position, and you're out, so you don't know any of this dramatic stuff is happening. The public's probably walking around saying, "What the heck is going on?" And then come the two paramedics that were from Alina Health Systems, and amazingly, it was Jessica Cross and Stephanie Lee. You wanted to know their names,
Yes.
and now you do. So Jessica and Stephanie, both nationally registered paramedics, come in quickly, and they work in conjunction with the fire department, and they bring the Lucas 2 device, which is a device that takes over CPR now in the third realm and does perfect CPR. I say perfect CPR because all of these mechanical devices are much better than you or I trying to do it. Like I said to you earlier when we were chatting, you can't do CPR on this chest for a consistent amount of time. So once they turn that Lucas device on and it begins compressing, you're getting blood flow to your brain. And it's going by other ways because you had the Widowmaker, which is a main fuel port, but there was still blood through that massive chest compression device to keep you alive. And ironically, and I wasn't really aware that AEDs don't always pick up on VFib, and I guess the first round the AED did not pick up on your VFib, but when the paramedics arrived, they shocked you 8 times.
Correct.
Some say 9, some say 8. I think 8 is just fine, right?
Yeah.
And you were in what we call refractory VFib. Did you know anything about that before we began to talk about that?
No.
And the refractory VFib really is that the heart the electrical system doesn't want to start. It sputters, it starts, it shuts down. It stutters, it sparks, and partly it's because you have a major vessel blocked, and the heart's been insulted. And so then they gave you some epinephrine, which improves the cardiac contractility of your heart. And you were a tough one because you kept coming back a little bit. In fact, didn't you say that the TSA said that he came back with
the CPR?
With some agonal breathing?
Just kind of raise up and gasp, and then did that a number of times during CPR.
They told me that I was a fighter because every time I came back, I fought tooth and nail. They had to restrain me at some point. So.
And the gasping is really important, and it's important for the public to know. It's important for paramedics to know because if I can have you gasping, I know that you've still got some juice in there and you're still going. So I think that was the first really cool sign that I'm sure the 2 paramedics were well aware of. Maybe not the TSA agents, but it's important that they told them that you were gasping. And then they gave you some amiodarone, and they shocked you. And then they gave you probably another 150 of amiodarone. And what do you think? That shock kept you going. And that's the return of spontaneous circulation. And then and we have the pictures from your hospital stay, and that must have been pretty incredible for you to get to the hospital and see him wired for sound.
Yeah, big time.
They put you in an induced coma, right?
Correct.
They cooled you, I think.
Yeah.
And then they corrected your problem, which was to put a stent past that Widowmaker. And they felt so confident that in 5 days you were out of the hospital.
On a plane and back to San Diego.
Back to San Diego.
And you walked past that same restaurant where you collapsed.
Actually, I rode past it.
You rode past it?
We put him in a wheelchair.
Yeah. Eric and Brittany, the 2 TSA agents, actually met us at the airport and personally escorded us through.
That's great.
Through the TSA.
Was that the first that you met them?
No,
you met them at the hospital?
They came to the hospital.
How'd that feel?
Oh, it was very emotional. I just couldn't. All I could do was cry. I mean, I hugged them and cried.
And for all the bad rap that the TSA gets, because they have to be the bad guy in many cases, it shows you that they're the good guys as well.
Yeah.
What did they say to you? Good to see you?
Yeah, it's good to see you. I mean, Eric said that, I mean, I forever changed his life just from this experience and this incident. And he said that, you know, comparing it to the birth of his daughter, that this was more fulfilling than the birth of his
The
daughter.
birth of you.
Save
Yeah.
Because you were the fruits of his labor,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So
Exactly.
That's amazing. Now, you got the call, and that must have been pretty harrowing for you to have to all of a sudden scamper to Minneapolis. Did you go by yourself?
No, I was at the cell phone lot in San Diego International waiting for him to call me to let me know his plane had landed, and he was due in at 9:40. It was 10:10, and I hadn't heard, so I texted, "What's happening?" And about 3 minutes later, I got a call from a cardiologist in Minneapolis letting me know that he had a cardiac arrest at the airport.
From his phone.
from my phone.
Oh,
Yeah.
so they saw the text message.
Yeah,
Whoa.
and used Siri,
and
were
they
able
were
to
able to
get me.
open up the phone through Siri.
They
Said
didn't
Siri,
open it necessarily.
call Laura.
But yeah.
Call Laura.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And it worked.
and it worked.
So yeah, he was a very, very, he was very, very kind. But I had to drive home from the airport, and I called my son, who happened to be down for the weekend from Los Angeles,
Which doesn't happen.
and
that
never
often.
happens. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
so-
I said, I just need you to stay on the phone with me while I drive home. So he did, and we were both just crying the whole time. And our other daughter, we have a total of 4 children. Our other adult daughter her husband got us tickets, and we were all, including our daughter-in-law Marianne, John's wife, who's a ER doctor in Los Angeles. We were all on a plane at 6 o'clock the next morning to Minneapolis. Yeah.
Now, what did the cardiologist tell you? Did you know how serious his condition was?
Well, he told me that he had a cardiac arrest, that they had put in a stent, and that he was in the intensive care unit. He was alive. Should have led with that, but okay.
Yes.
Kept me hanging there for a few minutes, but anyway, that's basically all the information that he gave me. He put me through to a nurse who gave me the details of where the hospital was and so on.
Now, how did you get all the other parts to the puzzle?
Well, once
Was
we
it me and other people that
Yeah, I mean,
filled you in?
we got there, and they tried, but we were so overwhelmed. We weren't really hearing what people were saying. It was really you, AJ, that started filling in a lot of the gaps with this whole bundle of care, and we had no idea. We had no idea about the Eligard. I was able to give that information to a reporter in Minneapolis. And I was so pleased that she included it in the story that she did on Greg, in the news. What was it? Last night or the night before?
Yeah, she
So she
got
was
in
able
contact
to-
with Charlie Lick.
Yeah,
and
she was able to interview him and talk about the Eligard. So that was great.
So how do you feel about all this whole system of care stuff?
I'm overwhelmed. I feel so much hope that that this is happening, that these things are being put into place, that money is being granted. How many people in the United States die of cardiac arrest? How many people make it if they don't die in a hospital setting? The numbers are so grim, and there are so many. And just the thought that this doesn't have to be the case means
And
everything.
this is the battle that we all face, is that, you know this now, but your Chula Vista departments need to understand this. Everybody needs to understand it. And some of them think it's silly. Some of them think all I need is CPR and a defibrillator, and it's not that way.
Yeah.
I mean, we have apps. Are you
That's
aware that we
stubborn.
have an app in this county that can notify one of your neighbors if they have an AED to run over here?
Oh,
So
wow.
Lauren was telling me about that.
Yeah. So it's called Pulse Point.
Wow.
And you can download Pulse Point, and it
Very
will
cool.
notify somebody.
Yeah.
Actually, it will notify you, but if Chula Vista is participating in it, and something happens in Chula Vista, Pulse Point will find the closest person and tell them, and they can come and they can start CPR on you.
Wow.
But now, does everybody know CPR?
Well, I took CPR years ago. We are all going back,
I was
obviously,
CPR
for
certified. Yeah.
a refresher.
Well, the key thing that we know now, and I'm going to say this because this is an important thing, is that science changes, is that the key thing is not so much the breathing
Yeah.
as it is continuous compressions. So continuous compressions. And if I collapse right now, then I need 2 of you to get on this big chest and push down. But
Wow.
the reality is it's a CPR. Many people don't even appreciate what the head-ups does, and we've explained that it reduces the intracranial pressure. And they think it's just another expensive machine. Well, I mean, the defibrillator that was used on you is $30,000. The Lucas device, I think, is $20,000. So, you know, a $6,000 machine that elevates and controls your intracranial pressure, I don't think is way off the scale. But some people think, well, it's just another gadget. And I think that what we've shown with you is it's just not another gadget. The return from refractory defibrillation, ventricular fibrillation, is very difficult. And the return and resuscitation of a widowmaker, although very successful with the stent, can be deadly. So I think that that's pretty important.
Yes.
So when you got to the hospital, what was your first impression? Oh my goodness, you had to see him.
I was horrified. It was the most devastating day of my life.
Yeah, she showed me pictures that I had so many tubes and IVs and everything going into my body.
He was so sick. So sick.
And it was just...
And there was no response from him for how many days? A couple days?
Just 24 hours. They started.
hours.
They
Weeding him off?
Yeah, weeding him off after 24.
Yeah, and at that point, they didn't know what the outcome was going to be.
Yeah, mentally.
Mentally, your neurological deficit.
Yeah.
The nurse actually said that when they took him off the medications, that he immediately opened his eyes, and that was a good sign.
That's a great sign.
Yeah.
Like immediate. So.
Yeah. And
So what do you
moving both
remember as the
arms.
first time that you really had eye contact with him?
Oh, well, I got a call. We went on a Sunday. Sunday was a very grim day. Although that evening, Sunday night, they were talking about intubating him. But then they decided, no, let's wait until the morning. You know, we don't want to rush this. So they kept
You mean
him.
extubating? Take the tube
Sorry,
out.
yeah.
Extubate,
Extubate.
right.
And they were keeping him under. So we still at that point didn't know, what kind of Greg we were going to get. The next morning I got a call from a social worker just letting me know about the services that they provide. And he went on for 10 or 15 minutes. I'm devastated because I still don't know if my husband is going to wake up. And about 15 minutes into the call, he says, oh, and I went to see him this morning and he's alert. Opened his eyes, and I'm like, again,
You little
could
devil.
have led with that.
Could've led with that.
Again,
I was,
could've led with that.
oh, what? Okay, we had no idea. So we hauled ass
That's okay.
over to the hospital and saw for ourselves. And when he looked at me and he squeezed my hands, and it was just, oh my God, we were just so overwhelmed. So overwhelmed. And then, even the cardiologists were saying, well, I think we can upgrade him to optimistic. I think that we can be conservatively optimistic now. But he
you
just,
very much.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. He just defied the odds. He was such a star at the hospital. Everybody wanted to come see him and
So he
talk
was
to
extubated
him.
when you saw him?
Yeah.
Was the tube out?
No, they did it that morning though.
Okay.
He
So he
did
was
not- As soon
looking
as-
at you. And
Yeah, it's still with
Not
the
like that
tube.
tube.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Did
no.
not like it.
They still had him, sedated a bit, but
That was tough to watch.
yeah,
Yeah.
to see him with the tubes down his throat. But it was clear.
So do you
that he was
remember
gonna
that
be
while you were
okay.
tubed? Do you remember seeing him in
No.
I tickled his palm.
Not until they took
tube
everything
out.
out and I started to come out of the anesthesia.
And what do you remember?
I remember, squeezing the hands.
Could you say anything?
Yeah. He asked about his mom
Yeah.
first.
Oh, really?
I asked about my mother.
Because that's the last thought that he had, was that he
Yeah.
came from his mom's.
Yeah.
And they're
Then
telling
he said he was sorry.
Yeah. Sorry that he put you through this?
Yeah.
Ah,
That's Greg.
yeah.
that's all right.
They're telling me that I came out and I had a specific job for each one of them. when I
He was
coming
still a
out.
little Looney Tunes.
You were giving them jobs?
Yes. Yeah.
I was giving them jobs.
My job was the ocean.
My job was to watch the ocean.
They're,
To watch the ocean, your job was what? Keep the ocean going or what?
Just the
Just
ocean.
the
The
ocean. We weren't asking a lot of questions at that point.
So I was feeding him his ice chips. That was my job.
Right.
But there was a loop on the TV, and he was watching it, and it would be at the ocean or a river
Ah.
and a forest.
So then what was it? Was it that night that he started to get a little bit more, or the next day?
It took a couple of days.
Couple days?
Couple days. He got, he was convinced that
You were actors.
the bells were
Yeah,
well, go ahead.
all the the bells and alarms,
Yeah.
that they have,
Yeah.
calling the nurses or when your IV is finished,
Or-
bells would go off.
Right.
And in my mind, I associated that with a task that I had to do.
Mm.
So it's kind of like the Pavlov
Right.
dog training thing. Because every time I'd hear a bell, I associated, I'm supposed to raise the bed up, cough because they wanted me to,
Right.
they wanted me to cough because I had a
The most-
So
little
you knew
pneumonia.
things that they were telling you
yes,
to do.
all the
Yeah.
good things.
But I
the bell was
associate-
reminding you to
I
do
associated
it.
that. So I'd raise the bed up, I'd cough, I had to breathe into that little thing to keep breathing, then eat ice chips.
Needless to say, I fed him a lot of
And
ice
as
chips.
soon as the ice chips, I ate the ice chips, the bells would stop.
in his mind.
Mm-mm. In your mind,
Then another sound would go off,
right?
and I associated that with I need to move my legs,
Good circulation.
to get circulation to my legs, so I didn't develop any blood clots or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I performed that task, the bell would go off. They'd stop. So I would lay back down. And that went on for about a day or
Days.
Days.
Yeah, a couple days.
Days.
Your daughters
It
say
was,
more
it was
than one
getting
day.
old.
But
There was a psychiatrist, a psych came in, and they were fascinated. There were three of them, and he was kind of quizzing Greg and he said, would you, consider a contradictory hypothesis? Is it possible that might not be the case? And then finally he started to accept that,
Realize,
maybe the bells aren't really, and then we knew we were going to get him back. But it was
So when did
kind
they
of
talk
touch
to you
and
about his
go.
neurological status?
Right away, they'd said
They
he
felt
may
he's
not have
responding
one.
great. Oh,
He
he may
may
not.
not have one. And then he got upgraded just almost by the minute because he was showing such great signs of having no impairment.
So when was the turning point when the Greg that you knew came back, kind of?
It was the day. When did we come home? We flew home on
Saturday.
You were
got discharged
Friday,
Friday,
so it would have been Thursday afternoon.
Thursday
So from
afternoon.
Saturday night when this happened to Thursday afternoon, he was basically back,
Yeah.
100%.
The morning and the afternoon were night and day. As well.
Yeah.
Thursday
That
afternoon.
Yes,
Yeah.
He just all of a sudden
Just kind
like a
of flipped the
went off.
switch, and I flipped the switch, and he had one visit from a occupational therapist, and she could see he didn't need any assistance, and physical therapy worked with him a couple times. They had him running down the halls, climbing stairs, going over obstacles. I mean,
So what were the first lucid words and things that he said to you when you realized that he was kind of back?
he
Did he want to know what happened?
Yeah, he kept asking, we had to keep telling him, and he was sure that he had been cut open. He was so concerned about that, and I told him, just look,
never
and,
had surgery.
and
He
feel.
equates that. We're equating to that with open heart surgery.
Of
right?
course, and that's that's reasonable.
Sure.
So, yeah.
also at the very beginning, when they took the tubes out, I associated that with, they're doing that because they're giving my family the opportunity to say their goodbyes.
Mm.
That was sad. Yeah.
So, and they kept assuring, no, that's not the case. And I kept,
Did he keep saying that?
I kept saying,
did, yeah.
bullshit. You
Yeah.
don't lie to me.
That was his
Yeah.
word. Yeah.
You thought bullshit. I'm going.
Yeah,
I'm not staying?
don't lie to me.
Yeah, he said you guys should be actors.
truthful.
You
But
memorize your
I
lines.
assumed that
They
that
fooled
was
you,
the
Greg.
case. Yeah, that's true.
Let me ask you
That's
this
true.
now. I mean, you know about the bundles of care now. You know all the stuff that happened in between. I mean, what would you say to the airport authority that put the yellow guard and all those things into place? That's pretty innovative for them to do that.
God bless.
I
God bless, and
I
thank
think they
you.
should be in every airport.
Well,
They
I
should
think-
be everywhere.
I think what I said to Keith Lurie and Charlie Lick is that the more that we highlight cases like yours, we have one in the Bay Area that's very similar that had ECMO for 5 hours with the Lucas. He had Lucas device for 5 hours and ECMO for 5 days, and he walked out of the hospital. And people have to realize, when they say that regular CPR works, the firemen do great CPR. Most will tell you they don't have many patients that fight them like you did. When you had the ACDC, you were actually fighting with them, that they had to kind of sedate you or calm you down a little bit.
Yeah.
And so do you think that even from the cardiologists on down, do you think that they realized that whole bundle of care that was happening out in the field?
I think Mooney did.
Yes.
He
Yeah.
was the one
Is
that
that Dr.
did.
Mooney?
Dr. Mooney was the one that did the stent,
stent.
and he came in to see us, and he showed us the films from the cath lab, and he was really proud of his work. And he was. That's what I said earlier. He was talking about it, but we weren't connecting the dots at that point.
Right.
I mean, we were just so overwhelmed with what was going on.
It was
so
vague as well. He just said that there's he was the first to get a new treatment.
Yeah,
of
and
sorts.
as
so
the,
they were familiar
Yeah.
with what had happened.
as the pieces unfold, and I'm hearing more and more of the story, it just blows my mind how, for lack of better words, I was in the right place at the right time.
Well, carefully choreographed. I mean, there are a lot of places in this country that I would feel very comfortable having my heart attack at, because their success rate, they know how to respond, they do what we call pit crew CPR, everybody knows their position, everybody knows their role. But if you were in some rural area in a small airport that did not have a EMS crew on hand or the TSA to be able to help you, other than the CPR, I mean, you're pretty much up a creek. But we're working on that. And they're working on getting more CPR. They're working on having more AEDs. The San Diego County is probably one of the safest counties to live in. There's AEDs everywhere. Pulse Point could help bring it to you and all of that stuff. And more and more people are looking at the mechanical CPR. And we continue to do stories about the benefits of head-up CPR. It's hard to convince people who've known CPR to be done flat.
Right.
When CPR was developed, Dr. Saffer in Pittsburgh helped develop CPR. I'm sure it never dawned on him that that there was a need to raise the head. He was just happy that we were getting some results when it was flat. And the only way that you could do CPR was flat.
Yeah.
And now that we have machines that can do it when you're at a 30-degree tilt, well, then that negates that problem. And now we
game
can
changer.
put the head up.
Yes.
And the more cases that we can show, and I've been in the lab out in Minneapolis, and I've sat there and I've looked at the parameters and I've watched what happens when the head goes up, and I've been next to doctors from all over the country, and they've said, I don't believe this. They're looking at it. Well, what is it that you don't believe?
Yeah.
The intracranial pressure has dropped.
Yeah.
The cardiac perfusion has increased, and the subject is doing fine. And we've done that with people who are normiostasis, where you just raise their head and you can see it.
Yeah.
I liken it to why I sleep with a pillow at night. I think I told you that on the phone.
Yeah.
Why am I more comfortable with my head up? Why is a congestive heart failure patient who has fluid in their lungs feeling better when they're in the up position? Because we're taking away some of that fluid load for them. So, what would you say to paramedics and system crews about the bundle of care that you received?
I would say just have an open mind and just embrace all the new technology.
And
that's
know
out
that
there.
you are the difference
Yeah.
between life and death for people. Know that the training that you've received and the passion with which you do what you do has implications that go beyond anything that you can possibly imagine in the lives of the people that you save.
And you've told me 100 times, but I think I want to say it again, that you just love the responders that came to help you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you're hoping to meet the 2 young ladies that were,
Yes.
and we can make that happen. I'm sure we can, because they want to meet you as well.
Yeah.
They don't
Sure
ever
they
see the
do.
fruits of their labor.
Right.
That
Yes.
young TSA guy, you changed his life forever.
Yeah.
So tell me how this has changed each of your lives. I'm going to start with you, obviously, because you've lost about 10 pounds. You look great. You feel good?
I have a totally new outlook on life. I mean, I was given a second chance, and I consider August 10th my new birthday now, because that's when I was reborn. I mean, it's just,
And you had great care. You got a
Great
great
care.
stent in there. You have no fears of it again.
No.
Although we are going to make sure they know CPR. You know?
Yeah.
We're going to make sure of that. How about you, Mrs.?
Well, we had already changed the way we looked at lifestyle and diet about 6 months ago, which I think also was a contributing factor to his miraculous recuperation after the fact. We'd gotten real healthy, but we're taking it a step further, following a plant-based diet regime now, eliminating all oils from our diet, eliminating, basically abandoning the American Western diet, and eating for our health very, very seriously. We are not taking this second chance for granted. We don't want all that training
Right.
and all that science and all of those good works to go to waste. So we're going to do everything in our power to honor our lives and to do everything we can to keep him and to keep our whole fammy safe and
Alex
healthy.
and Hannah, I want to hear from you guys. You're very young. You got your dad back for quite a while here.
Yeah.
How did this change your life?
Well, this just makes me want to go out and get CPR certified because I want to be able to help when something like this happens to anybody. I want to be able to step in and help.
I think for me, I've always been a very optimistic person, and I love seeing, I never had a doubt in my mind that he would be okay, or wouldn't be okay. I knew he'd be okay. Our family's very close, and it's only brought us closer, and I'm grateful for that, and I love his new outlook on life. It's all really great, and we're all so happy and grateful.
But you've got a family of 5 children now that are zealots for the bundles of care.
Mm-hmm.
You got your son's wife, who's an emergency
ER
as a
doc.
physician
Yep.
in LA.
Mm-hmm.
What hospital?
Good question.
Whittier, I believe.
She
Whittier.
moves around.
So is she aware of this whole bundle? And
She will be.
Yeah, they're coming
Yeah.
over today, actually.
and they should begin to understand. They have a tremendous system in LA and LA County, and I'm sure they're all going to be watching what happens with elevation of the head and all of these various things. In other words, we don't always give epinephrine to patients. It's a very choreographed approach. It's very innovative, and the old way of doing CPR just doesn't happen anymore. Right up the road in Rialto, California, as soon as they get to a patient, they put them on a device called the AutoPulse, which is very similar to Lucas, and they do the same thing. It just captures you, and that's the first thing they do. They don't stop CPR ever, and they don't worry about epinephrine. I mean, they put the person in a 30-degree tilt, and they brought their results up tenfold.
Wow.
And
Great.
and I think that's what we're looking for. I mean, I think that everybody has to be a zealot. I mean, when I'm at a cocktail party and somebody tells me, "Oh, we can do perfect CPR," I say to them, "Show me your data. Show me the Gregs that you have." Really, that's a tremendous thing to be able to say that. We actually have had places like Rialto where the firemen will come in the morning and they'll say to the chief, "Sorry." And the chief will say, "What do you mean, sorry?" "Well, we had a cardiac arrest last night and we couldn't save him." Years ago, they didn't expect that they could save many patients. Wow. Now they think they could save everybody, and they feel really bad if they can't. So they're actually having police officers in the Minneapolis area that are using the ACDC system and the Yellow Guard.
Great.
And they saved a 15-year-old drowning victim with it. That's going to be one of our key people. So,
Great.
You're historic. You were the first in the airport. I think we should put a plaque up for you.
I do too.
And
Commemorative, not memorial.
and you and I also share the fact that we both resuscitate succulent plants.
Yes,
right?
we do on a daily basis.
We found out that we both have a love. She's very famous. Lauren is very famous for her succulents. If you look up Laura Eubanks on YouTube, you'll see. I saw I don't know how you do the one with the alligator, but I want to find out how you do that.
We have we just surpassed 8 million views on our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And you know what I say with the bundles of care? With the bundles of care, it is hard for you not to survive. If I can get to you and I can give you the whole bundles of care. And that's the way I feel with my succulents. Like when I told you when I break one off, I feel 90% of the time that I can replant that, and that's going to stay alive.
99.
99? Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing.
Always room for a little error, but
But you
99.
have to do it, and it has to be in the soil. Like I use my little finger and I put it in, and I like those are like my children. I walk out, I have all my surviving plants.
Yes.
Just like she says, if your succulent stands up, you've done your job.
You've done your job.
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you all very much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
AJ,
I
so
feel like
much.
I've become part of your family here.
Yes, you have.
And it was just great to hear your story. And I was like a little kid when I called you because I wanted you to know that there was much more. Not that it wasn't great that the TSA came into the CPR. That was phenomenal. But you weren't aware
No.
of all the hurdles that happened before he got put in that ambulance.
Yeah.
And those two young ladies probably are two of the happiest young ladies when they meet you. They'll be the happiest. And we've made an agreement. We're going to arrange for you to meet them.
That's
Fantastic.
Because, you know, they go out every day and they have, you know, children that are killed in pedestrian accidents and, you know, some horrible things that happen to them. So when something really good happens,
They need to get the recognition that they deserve.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
well, I'm working in, you know, our goal is to, number one, get them the recognition that they deserve. And then the second thing is to get them the pay that they deserve because they're not paid like other healthcare providers. And their work is every bit as hard as what they're doing in the ICU.
Most
And I
definitely.
don't say that to diminish what happens in the ICU, but in the ICU, they have perfect lighting.
Yeah.
And they have perfect bed and elevation and buttons and all those other things. It's a lot different when you're working on the floor of the Minneapolis
Very true.
airport.
Sure it is.
And
Yeah.
those young ladies, I mean, I don't know how much they weigh, but I would be willing to bet that, you know, you'd be a challenge for them to do CPR and consistently for a long period of time. And they know that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a credit to Charlie Lick and the Alina system. They make sure that every unit has one of those mechanical CPR devices, and it's awful hard. So thank you very much.
Well,
Thank you, AJ.